Reincarnation of Souls. The story is very strange, controversial, and surprising at the same time. The story began when they took the little Edward Sombrero to the strange city streets. He acted as if he had returned to his hometown and home. Even when they confronted him with people he had never seen before, he knew the name of each of them and the details of their lives. He saluted them as old friends and knew them from time immemorial. Here, tears fell from his parents' eyes when they saw him rushing towards a middle-aged woman he didn't know. Stand by the road shouting this, "She is my real mom." And here the parents realized at this moment that a strange miracle and another spirit occupied the body of their young son, and the spirit of another child who departed from this world was reincarnated into the body of their son Edward. Nor do they know how or why this happened to their only son. The strange thing is that the child Edward, who did not exceed 5 years of age, he lives with his family in a suburb of Havana, Cuba. And the little one always talks about his other life and about the friends he met before and played with, about his brothers and his other family, and the things he did, and he talks about the night he died. At first, the parents laughed at the little boy's words, not believing what he was saying. When Edward was 3 years old, he told stories about 2 brothers named Mercedes and Jane, and about a beautiful mother with white skin and long, smooth black hair. His mother used to tell his father, John. The boy invents stories from his imagination and composes stories. But as the days went by, Edward's tales of his other life piled up. The tales are interconnected and connected to the extent that the family doctor, when he was visiting the family home, he listened to some of them and sparked his interest in the subject. So the boy sat on his knees and began to interrogate him gently. Edward said his other mother was a milliner. She usually dispatched him and sent him on errands to nearby shops, in particular to the drug store, whose prices were lower than other stores, and he preferred long tours so that he could enjoy riding the bike. They used to put in a room on the ground floor of the store and play a little. And the child Edward told the doctor how he had become so ill, and how his mother wept heartily, especially when the ambulance arrived to take him to the hospital. Edward said with emotion, But he did not arrive, but died in those moments. He said, "I remember looking at the flickering lights that were dancing inside the car with great pain and sadness. As a result of the succession of the road lights, these lights began to dim gradually. I was tired, but I wasn't afraid or sad." The doctor asked him, "And what was your name?" answered the Chinese aunt you see you. "We lived on Campanario, a street in Neofetas." Thus the doctor found the first thread that would help him investigate this strange case that aroused his attention and interest so much he will not deny. One weekend, the boy's family took a trip to Neovias. At one bend, they came across a drugstore. The boy shouted, "Look, this is the store I used to buy for a man play under with my bike." The boy slipped out of his parents' arms, darting towards the other bend of the road, crying out, "This is my house." Edward's father knocked on the door, but no one was home. The family returned in a state of great excitement to Havana, where the Spiritual Research Association was contacted with the aim of consulting him and asking him whether this could be one of the cases of reincarnation and her transition from one body to a new body in successive lives in a very strange way. Immediately, the organization began examining the case. The woman who lives in house number 69 on Via Campanario has been contacted. She said yes to the exact feat of her 4-year-old boy, Pancho. When he offered her to help the union in his search, she immediately agreed when she heard the story. And the boy Edward returned again to Neophytus, accompanied by a body of researchers. And they were carrying with them the file that includes all the stories that Edward told about his previous life. His mother called Amparo, his father, named Pearl, and his two brothers. The file included a full description of the area in which he lived, especially the railway behind the house, and how his father was working in the post office. He rode to work on a blue bicycle. He mentioned the names of the places and cities that the family traveled to on their trips. He described accurately what happened on these trips and talked about a dog he owned whose name was Tulu. He told of the unfortunate end of that dog between the wheels of a tram. In general, the file contained 53 incidents of the daily life of that family. The group of researchers was extremely surprised when the lady reported the truth and accuracy of these details. Also, most of these facts were not possible for anyone other than her son, Pancho, to know the details of them. The research team organized the meeting between Edward and Mrs. Sisso as follows. Mrs. Sisso stood in the middle of a road crowded with pedestrians, while Edward is walking with his mother in the same way. When this was done, the boy stopped walking when he saw Mrs. Sisso. He immediately shouted with great excitement, "That's my other mom over there at the shop window." Mrs. Caprio cried and dragged Mrs. Sisso away, unable to face the strange phenomenon. In another experiment, Edward was able to infer a number of relatives of the late child, Basho, and friends of his family from a large crowd. He addressed them one by their names, which only Pancho had called them. With the passage of time, the family became sure that their son, Edward, had been reincarnated by the spirit of another child who had died. But they don't know how or why, and they've never been to the house or place of the baby's birth before. But the world will still be full of oddities that fill the world around us in a very strange and exciting way. And you wonder why this is happening. The end.